They laughed at me for being a single mom. Every family gathering was the same. My cousin Rebecca would whisper behind my back, making sure I heard her cruel jokes about my poor life choices. But they never knew what she did to me. 5 years ago, Rebecca destroyed my happiness. She lied to Thomas, telling him I cheated while he was away on business, that my baby wasn't his. She showed him fake messages, convinced my family I was unfaithful, and turned everyone against me when I needed them most. All because she was jealous of my success. While I struggled to raise my son alone, they mocked me, called me the family failure, made me work the coat check at Rebecca's fancy wedding. But they forgot something important about me. I notice everything. I kept records. And now, I have proof of their massive financial fraud. Rebecca thought she won when she stole my future. She had no idea she handed me the perfect weapon for revenge. Now I watch her perfect life crumble, and I will make sure she feels every bit of the pain and humiliation she put me through. They laughed at me once. No one is laughing now. I arrived at the Westfield Club alone, my borrowed dress a stark contrast to the designer gowns floating through the marble lobby. The valet had smirked when I stepped out of my 10-year-old Honda, but I handed him the keys with a practiced smile that betrayed nothing. 5 years of being the family pariah had taught me how to wear a mask. Inside, crystal chandeliers illuminated faces that once claimed to love me. Now they only turned toward me with practiced pity or thinly veiled contempt. My cousin Rebecca's engagement party was in full swing, champagne flowing as freely as the hollow compliments exchanged between social climbers. "Ella, you actually came." My mother approached with that familiar nervous energy, her eyes darting around to see who might be watching her acknowledge me. "You look nice." What she meant was, I looked acceptable enough not to embarrass her. I had spent 3 hours preparing, knowing every flaw would be cataloged and discussed later. "Thanks, Mom. I would not miss Rebecca's big night." The lie slid easily from my lips. I would have preferred dental surgery without anesthesia to being here, but some appearances were necessary. Across the room, Uncle Gerald, family patriarch, and CEO of Westfield Investments, held court with investors, his booming laugh broadcasting success and confidence. He saw me and nodded curtly before turning away. Once he had bounced me on his knee and promised to teach me the family business. That was before I became the cautionary tale, the once promising business school graduate who threw it all away by getting pregnant without a ring. Rebecca spotted me from her perch beside her fiancé Nathan. She whispered something in his ear, and they both glanced my way before laughing. Then she glided over, her emerald dress shimmering under the lights. "Ella, I am so glad you could find someone to watch Milo tonight." Her smile never reached her eyes. "It must be so difficult finding reliable childcare on your budget." "Milo is fine, thank you." I kept my voice even. "Congratulations on your engagement." "Thank you." She extended her hand, making sure the enormous diamond caught the light. "Nathan and I are just delighted. His family's investment firm is merging with Westfield next month. Daddy says it is the biggest deal of his career. How wonderful for everyone." I took a small sip of champagne, letting the bubbles burn down my throat. "And how is your little venture going, the bookkeeping thing?" "Financial consulting," I corrected. "It is going well. I just signed 2 new clients last week." "That is cute." She touched my arm with practiced sympathy. "It is impressive how you managed to keep afloat, really. Single motherhood and all." Before I could respond, Uncle Gerald clinked his glass, gathering everyone for a toast. Rebecca hurried back to Nathan's side, leaving me standing alone as the room's attention shifted to the happy couple. "First," Uncle Gerald began after praising the couple, "I want to thank everyone for coming to celebrate Rebecca and Nathan's union. As many of you know, this merger brings together 2 of the finest families in finance." I watched from the periphery, remembering how 5 years ago I had been part of the inner circle. Before Rebecca destroyed everything, the memory surfaced, with perfect clarity, finding those messages on Thomas's phone. Rebecca warning him I was trapped in family obligation, that I had claimed to be pregnant to hold on to him. How she had convinced him I had been unfaithful during his business trip to London. By the time I discovered what she had done, Thomas had already left the country, believing the lies fed to him by the cousin I had trusted since childhood. When I confronted her privately, Rebecca had not even denied it. He was not right for you, Ella, she had said with casual cruelty. Besides, you were always so perfect. Harvard Business School, Daddy's favorite, the heir apparent to the family business. It was suffocating growing up in your shadow. In the present, Rebecca's voice cut through my thoughts as she took the microphone from her father. Nathan and I have a special announcement, she gushed, her hand finding her still flat stomach in a practiced gesture. We are expecting, and I just want to say how grateful I am that our child will be born into a proper family with both parents and the Westfield name. Her eyes found mine across the room as scattered applause turned to laughter at her obvious dig. Some of us were not so fortunate in our choices, she added. But I believe everything happens for a reason. Some people are examples to follow. Others are warnings. The laughter grew louder. My face burned as I gripped my champagne flute, keeping my expression neutral even as my heart pounded against my ribs. Uncle Gerald did not bother hiding his amusement. My own mother looked away, pretending to adjust her bracelet. I excused myself to the bathroom, locking myself in a stall to breathe, deeply until the shaking subsided. 5 years of this. The snide remarks, the exclusion, watching them close ranks while I struggled to build a life from the ashes Rebecca had created. As I emerged from the bathroom, voices from the adjacent study caught my attention. The door was ajar, and Uncle Gerald's distinct baritone filtered through. Nathan, my boy, the Cayman transfers are complete. Once we route the investors' funds through the shell corporations, the SEC will never connect the dots. This merger is going to make us untouchable. And the pension fund investments? Nathan's voice was lower, concerned. Already handled. The offshore accounts are set up under Rebecca's mother's maiden name, clean as a whistle. By this time next year, we will have doubled our money and those retirees will never know what hit them. I froze, my hand on the bathroom door. For years, I had suspected improprieties in the family business, whispers of tax havens and creative accounting. But this was different. This was fraud on a massive scale. I returned to the party with new clarity, watching Uncle Gerald pat Nathan's back as they rejoined the celebration. Rebecca caught my eye across the room and raised her glass in mock salute. That night, after returning to my small apartment on the unfashionable side of town, I sat at the edge of Milo's bed watching him sleep. At 4 years old, he had Thomas's eyes and my stubborn chin. He deserved better than to grow up labeled by his mother's supposed failures. I opened my laptop and pulled up a hidden folder I had been compiling for years. Records of conversations, inconsistencies in publicly reported financials, patterns I had noticed during family gatherings. Initially, it had been self-protection, insurance against being completely cut off from my inheritance. Now it looked like something far more valuable. I had evidence. Not enough, but a start. I opened my email and composed a message to Claire. Jang, my former roommate from business school who now worked for the Securities and Exchange Commission. I know what they have done, I wrote, and I know how to prove it. You understand what you are alleging, right? Claire asked 3 days later, her voice hushed despite the ambient noise of the cafe. These are serious accusations against powerful people. I slid a flash drive across the table. These are the preliminary documents, patterns of discrepancies in their public filings compared to comments made in private. It is not enough for a case, but it warrants investigation. Claire finished, pocketing the drive. The SEC has had suspicions about Westfield investments for years, but they are careful. We would need someone on the inside. I sipped my coffee. That is where I come in. Claire frowned. Ella, these people have already hurt you once. If they discover you gathering evidence, they will not. They see what they expect to see. Desperate single mother struggling to make ends meet. I leaned forward. 5 years ago, Rebecca destroyed my life because she was jealous. She made sure Thomas believed I had cheated, that the baby was not his. She turned my family against me when I needed them most. Claire knew most of this story. She had been there during those early days, had helped me pick up the pieces. And now I have a plan. That plan began with a calculated risk. I needed access to Westfield's internal systems. 3 days after meeting Claire, I swallowed my pride and called my mother. I need help, I said, the words tasting like ash. The consulting business is struggling. I was wondering if Uncle Gerald might have any openings at Westfield. Thoroy. Silence on the other end told me everything. Oh, Ella. She finally sighed. You know how Gerald feels about the situation. I have a finance degree from Harvard and 5 years of professional experience, I countered. Surely that counts for something. I am not asking for an executive position, just something to keep the lights on. For Milo's sake. Mentioning my son was the key. My mother's greatest shame was not standing up for me when the family turned their backs. Her guilt over her rarely seen grandson was my leverage. 2 uncomfortable family dinners and 1 humiliating interview with Uncle Gerald later, I had a position in Westfield's accounting department. The salary was insultingly low, the title deliberately vague, and my workspace was a desk in the corner with an outdated computer. But I had what I needed: access. Remember, this is a courtesy, Uncle Gerald had said during my first day, his imposing figure filling the doorway of my cubicle. Rebecca was not thrilled about this arrangement, but your mother was quite insistent. I appreciate the opportunity, I replied, the perfect image of gratitude. Keep your head down, do your work, and perhaps in time. He trailed off, making it clear that in time might never come. The holiday party is mandatory next month. Try to look presentable. By day, I processed routine transactions, played the role of the humbled failure grateful for scraps. By night, I cataloged evidence of systematic fraud, falsified earnings, reports, investor funds diverted to personal accounts, phantom assets listed on the books. I set up a secure server Claire had provided, transmitting encrypted data while maintaining my own backup copies. 3 weeks in, Rebecca visited my desk, eyes narrowing at my simple but professional appearance. Playing dress-up for the office? She asked, trailing manicured fingers across my desk. How quaint. Just doing my job, Rebecca. Yes, filing, or whatever it is you do. She placed an envelope on my desk. Here is your invitation to the wedding. We need someone to help with the coat check. You could bring Milo. He can learn what real success looks like. After she left, I opened the envelope. Inside was not a formal invitation, but a staff instruction sheet with coat check procedures highlighted. My hands trembled not with hurt, but with cold fury as I added it to my growing file of evidence. That evening, while implementing a new tracking system as instructed, I discovered something unexpected. Rebecca's name on transfer authorizations for the Cayman accounts. She was not just complicit in her father's schemes. She was actively involved. And based on the timestamps, she had been conducting these transfers during working hours from her private office at the Westfield estate, the sprawling mansion that had once been my second home. The next morning, I texted Claire, "We need access to the estate." "Impossible without a warrant," she replied, "and we are not there yet." Fortune favors the prepared. 2 days later, Rebecca stormed into the accounting department, eyes wild. "You. My wedding planner just quit. Daddy says you handled events at Harvard. You are taking over until we find someone suitable." It was not a request. Behind her frantic expression, I detected the smug satisfaction of assigning me another demeaning task. Little did she know she had just handed me the key to the estate. Over the following weeks, I balanced 3 jobs: my consulting business, my cover position at Westfield, and now wedding planning for the cousin who had systematically destroyed my life. Each role gave me access to different pieces of the puzzle. Each day, the evidence mounted. The SEC investigation progressed in parallel to the wedding preparations. Claire confirmed they were building a case, but needed irrefutable proof linking the executives to the fraudulent activities. Most importantly, they needed recordings of the principals discussing the fraud. "The annual board meeting is 3 days before the wedding," I told Claire during our secure call. "Every major player will be there, reviewing the merger documents." "Can you access it?" "Better. I am setting up the presentation equipment. I will have perfect cover to place recording devices." The pieces were falling into place when complications arose. Nathan began watching me with suspicious eyes whenever I was at the estate. Uncle Gerald started asking pointed questions about my access to certain files. And Rebecca, perhaps sensing something in my calm demeanor, became increasingly hostile. The night before the board meeting, Uncle Gerald called me into his office. "Ella, your presence these past months has been disruptive." He slid a document across his desk. "This is a settlement offer. Quite generous, I think you will agree. In exchange, you will resign immediately and relocate. Permanently." I scanned the paper. The amount was substantial, enough to give Milo a comfortable life far away from the Westfield influence. "Why now?" I asked, keeping my expression carefully neutral. "Rebecca deserves her special day without your situation reminding everyone of failure." He leaned back in his chair. "You never belonged in this world, Ella." "Not really. Not after your mistake." I let silence fill the room, watching him grow uncomfortable before I spoke. "And if I decline?" His smile vanished. "Then the small position you currently hold disappears, along with any hope of reconciliation with the family, your mother included." I folded the paper slowly, deliberately, buying myself time to control the anger threatening to break through my mask. "I will need time to consider." "Until tomorrow," he countered. "After the board meeting, I want your decision." That night, I finalized preparations with Claire. "Everything is in place," I confirmed. "Tomorrow during the board meeting, we get what we need." "And if something goes wrong?" she asked. I thought of the backup drives, the offshore account I had established, with my consulting earnings, the escape plan I had prepared. "Nothing will go wrong," I said with absolute certainty. "They have underestimated me for the last time." The morning of the board meeting dawned clear and bright, a perfect spring day that belied the storm I was about to unleash. I dressed with care in a conservative gray suit, applied minimal makeup, and pulled my hair into a simple knot, the perfect image of the deferential employee about to be dismissed. Milo watched me prepare, his small face serious. "You look like a boss today, Mommy." I knelt to his level. "That is because today is very important. Remember what I told you? After today, things will be different." "Better different?" "Yes, baby. Better different." I kissed his forehead before dropping him at school, knowing that by the time I picked him up, the wheels would be irreversibly in motion. At Westfield Tower, I arrived early to prepare the boardroom. Under the guise of checking the AV system, I placed specialized recording devices Claire had provided at strategic points throughout the room. Small, virtually undetectable, and designed to transmit to a secure server, they would capture every damning word. As executives began arriving, I maintained a carefully deferential posture, offering coffee and technical assistance. Rebecca arrived with Nathan, her hand possessively on his arm as she ignored my presence. Uncle Gerald entered last, giving me a pointed look that clearly asked if I had made my decision. I nodded slightly, letting him believe I would take the settlement. His satisfied smile confirmed what I had always known. He believed me weak, defeated, willing to disappear for the right price. "Gentlemen, shall we begin?" Uncle Gerald took his place at the head of the table once everyone was seated. "As you know, today we finalized the merger terms between Westfield Investments and Archer Capital." I slipped out quietly, closing the II door behind me, but not before activating the receiver in my purse that would allow me to monitor the conversation. At my desk, I inserted an earpiece and listened while pretending to work on quarterly reports. "The Cayman accounts have been restructured as discussed," Uncle Gerald was saying. "The pension fund assets have been temporarily reallocated to support the merger validation. Post-merger, we will show appropriate returns to avoid any suspicion." "And the SEC filing?" one of the board members asked. "Creative accounting," Nathan replied with a laugh. "Rebecca has been instrumental in managing the documentation. By the time anyone could possibly raise questions, the assets will be untraceable." "Speaking of Rebecca," another voice interjected, "was it wise to bring your daughter's former nanny into the accounting department? I noticed Ella Parker has access to some sensitive systems." My breath caught as I waited for the response. "A temporary arrangement," Uncle Gerald assured them. "Being handled as we speak. She will be gone by tomorrow with appropriate incentives to ensure her silence. Hardly a concern. The girl knows nothing of significance. The contemptuous dismissal stung less than it should have. In their arrogance, they had spoken freely, believing themselves untouchable. The recordings would be devastating. When the meeting concluded 2 hours later, I had everything the SEC needed. As executives filed out, I approached Uncle Gerald with downcast eyes. "I have considered your offer," I said softly, "and I would like until after the wedding to make arrangements, for Milo's sake." He frowned, clearly displeased with the delay, but unwilling to create a scene in front of lingering board members. "Fine. Monday morning, first thing, you sign the papers and you are gone." He adjusted his tie. "And Ella, do not think this means you are welcome as a guest at the wedding. You are there to work, nothing more." "Of course, Uncle Gerald. I understand my place." As he walked away, I transmitted the recorded files to Claire with a simple text. "Package delivered." Her response came minutes later. "Confirmation received. Operation proceeding." That evening, I received an unexpected call from my mother. Her voice was strained, unusual. "Ella, I heard about Gerald's proposition." I said nothing, waiting. "Are you really considering leaving?" she finally asked. "Would it matter to you if I did?" The lengthy pause told me everything I needed to know. 5 years, and she still could not choose between her daughter and the family that had abandoned us. "I just want what is best for you and Milo," she said finally. "After tomorrow, everyone will see what is best," I replied cryptically before ending the call. I spent that night with Milo, reading his favorite stories and watching him sleep. Tomorrow would change everything, and I needed this moment of peace before the storm I was about to unleash. Claire called early the next morning while I prepared for the wedding. "Everything is confirmed. The evidence is overwhelming. We are moving forward with the operation tonight." "At the reception?" I confirmed. "Yes. Agents will be in position. The warrants are being processed now." I hung up and looked at myself in the mirror. For the first time in 5 years, I allowed myself a genuine smile. Today, justice would be served cold, elegant, and devastating. Just like the champagne that would be flowing freely at Rebecca's doomed celebration. The historic Westfield estate transformed into a fairy tale setting for Rebecca's wedding day. White roses cascaded from marble columns, crystal decorations caught the afternoon light, and the scent of jasmine perfumed the air. It was exactly the extravagant display I had expected, a monument to excess built on stolen funds and broken promises. I arrived early for my assigned coat check duties, dressed in a simple black dress that adhered to staff uniform requirements while still allowing me to blend with guests if necessary. Rebecca had made it clear I was to remain invisible, a service provider rather than family. "You are at the north entrance," the head coordinator instructed, handing me a communication device. "Stay there until the ceremony concludes, then transition to reception assistance." This positioned me perfectly to observe guests' arrivals, including the undercover SEC agents Claire had promised would be in place. I recognized two immediately, a woman posing as a photographer's assistant and a man disguised as catering staff. They acknowledged me with subtle nods. As guests filtered in, I played my role flawlessly, taking coats and offering directions with practiced deference. My mother arrived with her sister's family, glancing nervously in my direction before hurrying, passed without acknowledgement. The ceremony itself was visible from my position, Rebecca resplendent in a designer gown that reportedly cost more than my annual income, Nathan looking appropriately enchanted as she glided down the aisle. Uncle Gerald beamed with pride, the perfect image of the successful patriarch giving away his beloved daughter. None of them noticed me slipping away briefly to place the final recording device in the reception hall, disguised within a floral arrangement near the head table. By the time guests transitioned from ceremony to cocktail hour, everything was in place. The reception began with typical extravagance, flowing champagne, gourmet hors d'oeuvres, a string quartet playing classical arrangements. I circulated unobtrusively with water trays, positioning myself to capture key conversations. Uncle Gerald's business associates clustered in corners, discussing the merger in hushed, excited tones. Rebecca held court near the gift table, accepting envelopes likely containing sums that would make most people's yearly salaries look like pocket change. I caught snippets of their conversations as I moved through the crowd. Biggest deal of the decade. Stock will triple once announced. Gerald has outdone himself this time. Little did they know the stock would be worthless by morning. At precisely 8:45 p.m., as planned, my phone vibrated with Claire's message. Green light. The timing was perfect. Dinner had concluded, the first round of toasts completed. Rebecca and Nathan had just taken to the dance floor for their first dance when Uncle Gerald clinked his glass for attention. Before we continue celebrations, he announced, I would like to propose one more toast to my beautiful daughter and her brilliant husband. Together they represent the future of Westfield, integrity, vision, and excellence. Guests raised their glasses as I moved to a position near the main entrance, counting silently as glasses clinked. It was time. As if on cue, the main doors opened. Federal agents in dark suits entered silently, positioning themselves at key exits. The string quartet faltered, then stopped. Rebecca noticed first, her smile freezing as she spotted the agents. Nathan followed her gaze, his arm tightening around her waist. Claire entered last, her badge prominently displayed. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Special Agent Zhang with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Please remain calm. The room erupted in confused murmurs as she continued. Gerald Westfield, Nathan Archer, Rebecca Westfield, and the Board of Directors of Westfield Investments, we have federal warrants for your arrests on charges of securities fraud, wire fraud, money laundering, and tax evasion. Uncle Gerald's face flushed crimson. This is outrageous. Do you know who I am? Yes, Mr. Westfield. We know exactly who you are and what you have done. Claire gestured to her team, who moved toward the head table. We have extensive evidence of your fraudulent activities, including recorded admissions from yesterday's board meeting. Rebecca's eyes darted wildly around the room until they found mine. The moment of recognition dawned slowly on her face as I deliberately stepped forward from the shadows. You, she whispered, understanding crashing over her features. I raised my water glass in a silent toast, mirroring her mocking gesture from months before. Chaos erupted as agents moved to secure the principals. Nathan immediately pulled away from Rebecca, creating distance between them as if physical separation might somehow shield him from association. I had no knowledge of any illegal activities, he announced loudly, eyes darting between agents. I was misled about the nature of these transactions. Rebecca's mouth fell open at his immediate betrayal. Nathan, tell them we were not involved in Daddy's business decisions. But Nathan was already being escorted to a separate area for questioning, his loyalty evaporating at the first sign of trouble. Uncle Gerald attempted to maintain control, demanding to call his attorneys, but the evidence was too overwhelming. As agents recited his rights, he finally spotted me watching calmly from the periphery. You, he snarled, understanding dawning. You did this. I approached slowly, maintaining perfect composure. 5 years ago, you all laughed when Rebecca destroyed my relationship and left me to raise Milo alone. You called me the family failure. I let my gaze sweep across the stunned family members. Today, I am the only one here not facing federal charges. Rebecca lunged toward me, her perfect makeup streaked with tears of rage, but an agent stepped between us. You ruined everything, she shrieked as they led her away. This was my perfect day. Perfection built on lies crumbles easily, I replied, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. You chose this path, Rebecca. You made destruction an art form. I simply learned from the master. As they escorted her past me, I leaned in slightly. By the way, the federal government has an excellent support system for single mothers in prison. You will need it. The color drained from her face as the reality of her situation fully registered. Pregnant, abandoned by her husband at the first sign of trouble, and facing years in federal prison. My mother approached as the principals were being escorted out, her face ashen. Ella, what have you done? What you should have done years ago. Protected your family. Your real family. I glanced toward the door where Rebecca was being led away. You chose the wrong side, Mom. You always did. For the first time in 5 years, I saw genuine regret in her eyes. Can you ever forgive me? I considered her question carefully. Forgiveness is not part of today's agenda. Understanding, your choices is enough for now. As guests were ushered out of the reception, many in shock at witnessing the downfall of one of the city's most prominent families, Claire approached me. You should know, this case will be very public. Your involvement will come out. I nodded. I am counting on it. Was it worth it? She asked quietly. I watched as the last of the Westfield empire was escorted into waiting vehicles, their designer clothes and perfect appearances incongruous with their handcuffs and stunned expressions. Ask me again in a year, I replied. The headlines dominated financial news for months. Westfield empire collapses amid massive fraud charges. Whistleblower cousin exposes billion-dollar financial scheme. From family outcast to financial hero. The Ella Parker story. The trials were swift and devastating. The evidence I had gathered left no room for reasonable doubt. One by one, the defendants accepted plea deals to avoid maximum sentences, all except Rebecca, who maintained her innocence despite overwhelming proof of her involvement. 6 months after the arrests, I sat in the federal courthouse watching as she faced sentencing. Her pregnancy was now visible, her designer maternity dress replaced by appropriate court attire. Nathan had already received his reduced sentence for cooperation, turning state's evidence against both Rebecca and Uncle, Gerald. Rebecca Westfield, the judge addressed her. This court has found you guilty of multiple counts of securities fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes. Your actions, along with those of your co-conspirators, resulted in the loss of millions from pension funds and individual investors who trusted your family's firm. Rebecca stared straight ahead, her expression stony as the judge continued. What the court finds particularly disturbing is your lack of remorse and your persistent attempts to place blame elsewhere. These were not mistakes or oversights. These were calculated decisions made with full awareness of their illegality and the harm they would cause. The sentence came down, 8 years in federal prison, with the provision that she would be allowed to give birth before beginning her term and make arrangements for the child's care. As court adjourned, her eyes found mine across the room. For a moment, we held each other's gaze, two women whose paths had diverged so dramatically 5 years earlier. I felt no triumph, no joy at her downfall, only a quiet certainty that justice had finally been served. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed me. Ms. Parker, how does it feel to be vindicated after years of being ostracized by your family? Will you be pursuing civil damages against the Westfields? What are your plans now that Westfield Investments has been dissolved? I addressed them with the calm confidence I had cultivated throughout this ordeal. Today is not about vindication. It is about accountability. The financial system only works when those who abuse it face consequences, regardless of their name or position. In the months following the sentencing, my consulting firm expanded rapidly. Clients sought my expertise in ethical financial practices and fraud detection. The irony was not lost on me. The family that had mocked my little venture had inadvertently launched me into unprecedented success. 1 year to the day after the arrests, I received notification that the Westfield estate would be sold at auction to satisfy judgments against the family. The sprawling mansion where I had once been welcome, then explicitly excluded, would go to the highest bidder. My new wealth and reputation opened doors previously closed to me. With backing from ethical investors who appreciated both my financial acumen and integrity, I arrived at the auction with a specific purpose. The bidding was competitive but brief. When the gavel fell, the historic Westfield estate belonged to me. 3 months later, after extensive renovations, I stood on the grand staircase, the same one where Rebecca had planned to make her bridal entrance, addressing the gathered crowd. Welcome to the New Beginnings Financial Independence Center, I announced to the assembled guests and press. This facility will serve as both the headquarters for Parker Financial Consulting and a resource center for single parents building financial stability. The crowd applauded as I continued. Every year, we will provide scholarships, mentoring, and employment opportunities to parents who, like myself, found themselves starting over without family support. Success is not determined by your last name or your marital status. It is built through resilience, integrity, and determination. Cameras flashed as Milo joined me on the staircase, now a confident 6-year-old thriving in our new reality. My mother stood in the back, our relationship cautiously rebuilding after her tearful apology and months of demonstrated commitment to change. The center's first event concluded with tours of the facility, which now housed state-of-the-art financial education classrooms, childcare facilities, and professional development resources, all in rooms that once hosted extravagant parties celebrating wealth without conscience. Later that evening, after the guests had departed, I received an unexpected message requesting a meeting. The following day, I drove to a modest apartment complex on the outskirts of the city, where Rebecca had been living since making bail arrangements for her appeal. She opened the door with her infant daughter in her arms, the ankle monitor on her leg a stark reminder of her impending incarceration. The luxurious beauty that had once been her armor had faded, replaced by the tired appearance of a woman facing an uncertain future alone. "Thank you for coming," she said stiffly, gesturing me inside. The apartment was small but clean, nothing like the opulence she had grown up expecting as her birthright. "What do you want, Rebecca?" I asked directly. She adjusted the baby in her arms. "I wanted to see you, to understand." "Understand what?" "How it feels to have your life destroyed by someone you trusted, to be mocked and excluded when you are most vulnerable." I kept my voice level, not for her sake, but for my own. "You already know how that feels now." "I never thought it would end like this," she said quietly. "That is the difference between us," I replied. "I always knew exactly how this would end. From the day I found those messages on Thomas's phone, I understood what you were capable of. It just took time to gather the evidence." She looked down at her daughter, then back at me. "What happens to her when I go to prison next month?" "That is not my concern." "Could you?" She hesitated, pride visibly warring with desperation. "Could you help me find a good family? To care for her until I am released? Your center, it helps single mothers." The irony was almost too perfect. I studied her, searching for manipulation, but finding only defeat. "The center helps those committed to ethical rebuilding," I said finally. "Our social services coordinator can connect you with appropriate resources. That is all I can offer." Relief flickered across her face. "Thank you." As I prepared to leave, she asked one final question. Was it worth it? Dismantling everything for revenge? I paused at the door, considering her question carefully. This was not revenge, Rebecca. It was justice. You destroyed lives through deliberate cruelty and fraud. I simply ensured consequences, followed actions. From the window of her small apartment, she would soon watch as my car returned to the estate that once represented her birthright. She would read about the success of the center in newspapers during her incarceration. She would understand finally the cost of her mockery. "The difference between us," I said as I left, "is that I never needed to tear anyone down to succeed. Remember that while you are rebuilding your life. Goodbye, Rebecca." Driving back to the estate, my estate now, I felt no triumph or gloating satisfaction. Only the quiet peace of knowing that Milo would grow up in a world where actions had consequences, where resilience overcame cruelty, and where his mother had transformed from cautionary tale to role model through sheer determination and strategic patience. The family that had once labeled me their greatest failure now watched from the shadows, disgraced, disinherited, and diminished, as I built something meaningful from the ruins of their corruption. They had mistaken my silence for weakness. I had let them, and that was their most expensive mistake. 1 month later, Rebecca began her sentence at a minimum security women's federal prison. True to my word, I had connected her with legitimate services to arrange care for her daughter. My generosity extended exactly that far and no further. The child deserved better than to suffer for her mother's sins, just as Milo had deserved better than to be punished for Rebecca's jealousy. The financial press continued to follow my story with enthusiasm. Forbes featured me in their Women to Watch issue. The Wall Street Journal published an extensive profile titled The Whistleblower Who Changed Finance. My consulting firm expanded rapidly, with offices opening in 3 major cities. Where once I had struggled to pay rent, I now oversaw a growing empire built on the principles of transparency and accountability. 6 months into Rebecca's incarceration, I received a letter. The prison stationery was cheap. The handwriting, less elegant than the flowing script that had once graced Rebecca's social correspondence. "I think about you every day," she wrote. Not with hatred, though I tried that at first, but with something like understanding. "I never saw you, Ella." "Not really. I only saw what I wanted to see. A rival to be eliminated. Now I have nothing but time to reflect on what I did to you. To Thomas, to Milo. Perhaps someday you can forgive me." I placed the letter in a file marked Rebecca, alongside news clippings about her case and correspondence from her attorneys attempting to negotiate better terms for her eventual release. I never replied. Some bridges remain better burned. As the first anniversary of the center approached, I expanded its mission, establishing a legal fund for whistleblowers, named after Claire, who had since been promoted within the SEC. We partnered with law schools to provide pro bono services to victims of financial fraud, with a special focus on cases where personal relationships had been weaponized to facilitate exploitation. My mother became a regular visitor at the center, her initial hesitancy giving way to genuine support. She never explicitly apologized for failing to stand by me years earlier, but her actions spoke louder than words could have. She volunteered in the childcare facility, attended Milo's school events, and gradually earned back a place in our lives. "You could have destroyed me too," she said one evening as we shared dinner in what had once been Uncle Gerald's formal dining room. "I would have deserved it." "Family should mean something," I replied simply. "You needed time to remember that. Rebecca never will." Thomas reached out after reading about me in an international business journal. His email was cautious, filled with questions about Milo and tentative expressions of regret. I answered with a brief message and a recent photo of our son. We began a careful correspondence, laying the groundwork for him to someday meet the child he had, abandoned through no fault of his own. Unlike Rebecca, his betrayal had been the result of manipulation rather than malice. I could separate the two. The business continued to thrive. I was invited to testify before congressional committees on financial reform, my story serving as a powerful example of both the personal and systemic costs of unchecked corporate fraud. Each testimony further cemented my reputation, while ensuring Rebecca's name would forever be associated with corruption and failure. 18 months into her sentence, Rebecca petitioned for early release. Her attorneys cited her cooperation in ongoing investigations and her infant daughter's welfare. I received notice as an interested party in the case. "Will you oppose it?" Claire asked when we met for our monthly lunch. "No need," I replied. "Her sentence is just. Let the system work as it should." The petition was denied. Rebecca would serve her full term, released only for supervised visits with her daughter. Each denial, each restricted visitation, each newspaper article referring to her as disgraced financier Rebecca Westfield was another small stone added to the wall of consequences I had constructed around her. On a crisp autumn day 3 years after Rebecca's arrest, I walked through the renovated gardens of the estate. What had once been manicured to sterile perfection now flourished with native plants, a community garden, and play areas for the children of center participants. Milo, now 7, raced ahead with friends from his school, which now regularly visited the Center for Financial Literacy programs. A notification appeared on my phone. Rebecca's appeal had been denied by the final court of jurisdiction. Her conviction and sentence would stand without further possibility of reduction. It was a footnote now, barely worthy of attention in my busy schedule. That evening, I hosted a fundraising gala for the center. Business leaders, politicians, and social advocates gathered in the grand ballroom where Rebecca's wedding reception had unraveled. I wore a simple but elegant gown, addressing the crowd with the quiet confidence of someone who knows exactly who she is and what she stands for. We built this center on the belief that personal setbacks need not define us, I told the assembled guests. That with the right support and unwavering determination, we can transform challenges into platforms for change. Over the past 3 years, we have helped more than 500 single parents build financial independence and stability. Applause echoed through the room as I continued. Today, I am pleased to announce the expansion of our scholarship program, which will now provide full university tuition for exceptional students raised in single-parent households. What I did not need to say, was that each scholarship would bear my name, not the Westfield name. That each success story emerging from the center would reinforce my narrative, not theirs. That with each passing year, the name Westfield would fade further from public memory, while mine would grow in recognition. The center flourished. My business expanded internationally. Milo grew into a kind, perceptive child who understood the value of integrity and resilience. And far away, in a prison cell, Rebecca counted days. Her world shrunk to visiting hours and commissary privileges. 5 years to the day after Rebecca had mocked my single motherhood at her engagement party, I sat in my office, the former master suite of the Westfield mansion. The views extended across the estate's gardens to the city beyond. On my desk sat a letter informing me of Rebecca's pending release, scheduled for the following month. I was not concerned. The world she would re-enter bore no resemblance to the one she had left. Her father lived modestly under house arrest in another state. Her ex-husband had remarried and severed all ties to the Westfield name. Her friends had long since distanced themselves. Her daughter was being raised primarily by relatives who rarely mentioned her mother's past. The Westfield fortune was gone. The Westfield influence was gone. The Westfield legacy was reduced to a cautionary tale in business ethics textbooks. And through it all, I had risen, building something genuine and lasting from the ashes of their corruption. They had laughed at me for being a single mother. For years, I had endured their mockery, their cruelty, their dismissal. Now, I had transformed their greatest weapon against me into my most powerful asset. My independence, my resilience, my determination had not only survived their attempts to break me, it had thrived. In the end, I had not just reclaimed my life. I had replaced theirs. They had mistaken my silence for weakness. I had let them, and that was their most expensive mistake.